the government seek to pick holes in People Before Profit Solidarity's rent reduction bill, but offer absolutely no alternative on how to control rents that are off the charts and that are directly contributing to the worst homelessness crisis on record, where 11,600 families, record number, including nearly 4,000 children, are languishing in emergency accommodation, and thousands more have got notices to quit and are facing the real prospect of eviction and homelessness over the next period because of your callous and cruel decision to lift the moratorium on evictions. And you offer no solution. And I really wish, Minister, that you and the Senior Minister, who should be here, but that's typical of his studied contempt of opposition bills or motions that seek to actually address the housing crisis, contrary to the lie the government tells repeatedly that the opposition only critique the government but don't offer solutions. But actually, what we've actually seen this morning is that the truth is the exact opposite of that. We offer solutions, you pick holes in them and offer no alternatives. Now, you see, the question is, if you take the family, for example, who I got notice from my office yesterday while I was sitting in the Housing Committee across from Darragh O'Brien, where he was justifying the ridiculous and disgraceful announcement that he's going to give hundreds of millions of euros to private developers in order to incentivise and encourage them to deliver more housing. I get a text from a family, or from my office, about a family where the bailiffs are coming around on Tuesday. This is a family who are both working and have 2 children. Being evicted from the home they've lived for 13 years, always paid the rent, never did anything wrong. And just to add insult to injury for this family, the mother works for an insurance company, but she works from home. So if she goes into emergency accommodation, she loses her job as well. As if it isn't bad enough that her kids, her family, who've done nothing wrong, are going to be evicted, she's also going to lose her job. Now, what do you think she's been doing as she's been dragged through the notice to quit process and the eviction process and going to court, facing a court proceeding where a judge enforces the order because there's no protection for these tenants who've done nothing wrong? They are desperately looking at myhome.ie, daft.ie, looking desperately for something that they can afford, but they can't find it. You go on My Home and daft.ie now. Try and find something that a worker on ordinary, average incomes could actually afford. And I'm telling you, you will be feeling despair very, very quickly if you do. They spent a year trying to find places. And now the bailiffs are coming on Tuesday, right? Because they can't find anything. If you do go on My Home and daft.ie, what you will find is 1-bedroom apartments for €2,200. That's what you'll find in my area, 1 bedroom for €2,200. You will not find anything for 2-bedroom for less than 2,500, and you are more likely to be looking at 3,000. So when we look at the average that renters are paying as a proportion of their income, being around 40%, that masks the much more grim and desperate reality in Dublin, in Galway, in Cork and so on, where you're more likely, based on average incomes, to be paying 50%, 60%, 70%, 80%, and in my area, 100%. 100% of average incomes is what you will see when you go on daft.ie or My Home looking for a 2-bedroom or for a 3-bedroom. Okay? In other words, there's nothing there for you. Nothing. The family that were evicted in court that I brought up again and again and again, another working family who've already been evicted. They got a stay from the judge, in fairness, to give them a few months, but they are evicted. They now have no home, and they will be out on the street. Jackie estimated that over the 2 years of the process of them, essentially being evicted for doing nothing wrong, she reckons she'd contacted about 700 advertisements, landlords who've been advertising. Most of them don't even reply, and the vast majority of them completely unaffordable, or there's a massive queue. They're wasting their time. Or let me give you another example that again I've brought up repeatedly, of a mother with her child. When she went into emergency accommodation, her child was 8. Her child is now 12. She works, has always worked, works for TUSLA, looking after vulnerable children, ironically. But her own child's mental health is now on the floor because he has been living with her in one bedroom emergency accommodation for 4 years. Can't bring his friends home. Doesn't want to obviously tell people about his desperate situation. That's what that's doing. And all of these people are looking at My Home, daft.ie, and they're looking at rents they couldn't dream of affordable. In her case, she's also been knocked off, having 8 years waiting on the housing list, is knocked off the housing list because her income goes over. Terrified she'll get a pay increase. This is what people are facing. And what have you offered these people? And many, many more like them? Nothing. Zero. Zilch. Nothing. So we are saying link rents to people's ability to pay. Is that an unreasonable thing to do? Seems to me a very reasonable thing to do. But oh my God, it might upset the landlords who are making extortionate profits. I mean, Oireachtas are making about 50% on every tenant. 50%. I mean, I've heard Deputy Healy-Rae here bemoaning the fact that they have to pay 50% tax, landlords. And I think, really, oh my God, how awful for you, a multiple property owner getting taxed 50% on income where you're doing nothing for that. I mean, in normal business investments, if you got a 2 or 5% increase, you probably think a return on your investment, you'd think you'd be doing okay. But landlords feel they're entitled to 50%, 60%, 70% return on their investment. Why? For doing nothing. Because they own lots of property. It's absolutely disgusting, but you don't want to upset these people who are disproportionately represented in this House and who will be voting on our bill because they think, oh my God, it's outrageous that anybody should suggest that the amount of money we can make from the human misery that we are now facing with the housing crisis of all those desperate families might be interfered with by rent control measures, which are commonplace in the rest of Europe. Last 10 years, 87% increases in rents on average in this country. Across Europe, only 18%. Why is that, Minister, do you think? Why do you think that is? It's because in the rest of Europe they have rent controls. That's why. Various types of rent controls, they can control the rents, and they do control the rents. But all you do is tell us that the developers and the landlords and the investment funds won't like it, threaten to pull out of the sector or the market or whatever, and therefore we can't do anything. That is not acceptable, it's not a solution, it's not an answer. So if you think 25% is too much, why don't you propose 30%, as Deputy Barry said, or even 35% as you're doing with your cost rental? Although I'd like to inform you, I have a letter from a teacher here today who points out that the 35% of his income will mean, even though he's not eligible for social housing, he won't be able to afford the cost rental that's coming in Shangana, because the rents are going to be over the 35% threshold. So, earns too much for social housing, but not enough for the government's cost rental, so-called affordable solution. Right? So at every level, your policies are failing and leading to misery and suffering for ordinary people who've done nothing wrong because you won't challenge the sacred cow of the market.
Thank you, Deputy.
It's a disgrace, and you should be ashamed of yourselves. But at least we're putting forward solutions, and hopefully we'll get rid of you so we can implement them.
Thank you, Deputy. Just for the deputies that weren't here that you mentioned, I'm sure they will be all declaring their interest just in the interest.
Who?
They're declaring their interest in the interest of balance.
Who are?
The deputies that you mentioned that aren't here. That's all. And we move on now.